Over the past few years, the gaming landscape has undeniably shifted towards a trend of replayability. More than ever before is it important for games to not just be a one-off experience, but something you can come back to again and again. This has been attempted to varying degrees of success over the years, from titans such as League of Legends and Warframe, to the soulless corporate hellscape that is the mobile gaming market. There is one game in particular I feel embodies the art of good replayability, a game that genuinely rewards you for the time and effort you put into learning it, rather than relying on predatory tactics to get you hooked and then keeping you in with that sweet, sweet sunken cost fallacy. If you can't tell from the title of this video, that game is Path of Exile. There are a number of facets to Path of Exile's design that make it so replayable, from the seasonal content and overhauls to keep the meta fresh, as well as the deeply intricate endgame. But that's not what I want to talk about today. While prepping to level my 5th character of the recently released Metamorph League, it occurred to me that despite having gone through Path of Exile's leveling process more than 20 times at this point, I wasn't bored of it, or even felt like it was a chore, which got me thinking about what exactly kept things interesting for me over so many playthroughs. And the conclusion I came to was that the most iconic thing about Path of Exile's leveling experience was its level design, which is without a doubt one of the best I've ever encountered in a video game. In terms of replayability, what stands out so much about Path of Exile's leveling system is that every playthrough has something fulfilling for every type of player. For your first playthrough, there's more than enough to keep you invested for 20 to 30 hours. Every tile set in the first half of the game feels fresh and interesting, with enough variety both between acts and within each act to keep you from feeling burnt out on the designs. Speaking of acts, Path of Exile's story consists of 10 of them, with the latter 5 being a return to the originals but with a different spin on them, making you excited to experience older content in new ways. As far as actual content goes, there are dozens of enemy types and quests, but also a massive amount of dialogue and environmental lore that goes in depths on the history of the continent of Rayclast and its inhabitants. Okay, so actually, according to the game's achievements, there are 30 side quests, 505 sets of dialogue, not lines of dialogue, sets of dialogue, and 140 pieces of environmental lore. So that's a pretty decent amount. Of course, you won't be reading every tidbit of lore or completing every side quest on your 7th playthrough of the story acts, but the game becomes engaging in entirely new ways in subsequent playthroughs. Tile sets used in each act are procedurally generated, so it prevents them from feeling entirely samey. But each tile set follows anywhere from 4 to 7-ish distinctive layouts that you will learn over the course of multiple playthroughs, thus reducing the time you spend getting through the leveling process. It really does make you feel like you've earned the sense of achievement you get when you recognize a layout and beat it in record time. In the clip here, for example, I'm able to get to the sewers, the next story area, incredibly quickly because the entrance is in the same area as the crematorium I just entered in the last clip. Because I finished that area in less than 15 minutes, the previous layout hadn't reset, so I could just run back to the sewer grate I found earlier. That being said, this is definitely not an easy process. There are absolutely some areas I still consistently mess up speed clears of. I'm looking at you, Docs. And when this happens, I end up running around helplessly like the filthy casual I am. And that being said, when you combine expert knowledge of the leveling layouts, the desire to get to Path of Exile's endgame as quickly as possible at the start of a new league, and a little bit of friendly competition, you open yourself up to the vast world of Path of Exile speedrunning. If you remember earlier, I said your first playthrough of the story would take around 20 to 30 hours. Well, on the other side of the coin, there are people who can go from level 1 to killing the Act 10 boss, without dying, in just over 2 hours. You really do never stop being a noob. In all seriousness, while these runs are insane, and I absolutely recommend people try to get into racing in Path of Exile even if it's only casually, you don't need to be touching tips with world record times to experience a large amount of fun in racing. Things as simple as trying to get your next character to be 5 or 10 minutes faster than your last character can be a real thrill. And if you want to play multiple builds, you're gonna be running the story again anyway, so you may as well try to turn it into a fun game within a game. I'm sure at this point a lot of us seasoned Path of Exile players just let the story acts fade into the background, watching our favorite streamers, shows, YouTubers, or listening to podcasts while we do the same old song and dance we've been doing for months or even years. But I really wanted to take a step back and appreciate the genius of Grinding Gear Games in developing this leveling system. For me personally, I really struggle to beat the tedium of leveling through story missions in other games, It's why I never got too invested in the endgame of otherwise great titles like Borderlands 2 and Diablo 3. Path of Exile really has been a standout experience for me time and time again, but I'm going to stop gushing and tell you to try it out for yourself now if you're a new player, or to take a moment to appreciate how good the design is when you're rolling your next build.